What is up guys, Taiki here, and today I kind of want to go over the recent Wonderland proposal created by Daniele to essentially restructure and take over Sushiswap. So if you like the content, please like and subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section below. So I wanted to make this video just because I think it's important to document events like these, just because I think that in the future this could be like one of the turning points where Sushi becomes a hated, broken project into something that actually has potential. So in order to understand why this is important and for you to understand the full context of what led Daniele to make this decision, you kind of have to understand two things. First, the Sushiswap drama, right, and the scandal that existed in the past couple of weeks, and then the recent drama between Wonderland and Trader Joe, right? So this is on Avalanche. So let's kind of go over the drama first, just so you can kind of get an understanding of like what is Daniele's incentive for taking over Sushi. I mean, there are if you read through this, I'll go over this. It like makes sense, right? Like if you have a good understanding of DeFi, if you have a good understanding of business, marketing, sales, development, just everything, growth. I mean, this makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate it from that point, but you have to understand the backstory in order for you to fully appreciate this. So first of all, there was drama, right? This was December 8th, roughly 5 days ago, when Daniele initially said, hey, like Trader Joe, like just calling them out, saying, like AVAX MIM, like this pair, has a much more liquidity and higher volume than AVAX USDC. So why is the USDC pair getting 3.5x higher incentives, right? The Joe incentives than our pair, right? Like, the whole Frog Nation meme, like depends on, or it doesn't depend on anything, but the narrative is that, like, fuck the suits, like screw USDC, screw DAI, screw all these centralized things. Like we are Frog Nation, we are here for the people and we're all going to make it. Just let's like try to decentralize everything and, give power to the people and whatnot. So Dani essentially called them out, like saying, hey, like, give more rewards to our pool, right? AVAX min pool, or at least, even out a little, right? Like why does AVAX USDC deserve like a much higher multiple? And I think that's fine from Joe's perspective. I think a lot of people, right? If you do like a survey for 100,000 users, if you ask them like, are you more comfortable using USDC or MIM? I'm sure that, over 51% will say they're more comfortable with USDC. So I think higher incentives is fine, right? Maybe you can adjust over time, but the Joe devs didn't appreciate this take by Daniele. So whoever was running this Twitter account, right? I don't know, we don't know who this is. This kind of calls out Dani, says, hey, like like 70% of that liquidity is owned by you, right? It's owned by Wonderland. So even if we do increase those yields, it's going to dilute the yield for the average Joe, right? Trader Joe is the DEX for the average Joe. Together we can change this. We keep giving money to large mercenary funds, right? Calling Daniele and Wonderland a mercenary fund, and that's how they keep winning, right? So obviously, right now at this point, they kind of divided themselves, Wonderland versus Trader Joe, which is kind of sad to see, just because like if you look into the Avalanche ecosystem, without Trader Joe, Avalanche wouldn't be here, and like without Wonderland, Avalanche would also not be here. So the top two projects, beefing it out publicly, wasn't the best look on Twitter, but it is what it is, right? I'm not here to give like my hard opinions, but just sharing out what happened. And then Daniele was like, hey, like like these sushi forks, like they give me so much shit, but like behind closed doors, they're the one figuring out like which pool gets how much incentives. And then Trader Joe's like, hey, like I get so much shit for like figuring out where the farm rewards go, but like I don't like nobody talks about the fact that the time devs choose how to spend their DAO money. I mean, they're both like reasonable arguments. I wish they like settle this like behind closed doors, but I understand that on Twitter, it's very easy to just be vocal about like whatever your opinions are, and at the end of the day, like Wonderland, they market themselves as a DAO, right? And I'm sure they'll get there at some point, but in the short term, they're not a DAO, right? I mean, in crypto, in DeFi, nothing is a DAO. In fact, I am pretty bearish DAOs in general. I believe they can get there in like 5-10 years or something, but in the short term, in the next 12, like 24 months, I don't think DAOs can be that successful, because these projects, they're successful for a reason. They're successful because the leadership, right? Like for example, like Trader Joe, I mean Crypto Fish and like Murloc, right? That team is super strong. And without if Trader Joe was a DAO from the beginning, then like all the people that were like Joe token holders, they're just gonna vote on like proposals to pump their bags in the short term, and they would never become like the DEX that it is today. Similarly, Daniele, right? I mean, Daniele and his team is essentially the fundamentals behind Wonderland, Abracadabra, and Popsicle, right? Like a bet on Wonderland is a bet on Dani, a bet on Abracadabra is a bet on Dani, etc., right? And when you invest in Wonderland, you're indirectly investing in Abracadabra and Popsicle. When you're investing in Abracadabra, you're indirectly investing in time and Popsicle as well. So, there's no such thing as doubt. I'm sure you can get there at some point. And, there's a lot of hate against Dani that, like he's essentially figuring out like where the money goes. But I feel like, if you're a time holder, like, would you rather have Daniele, who's like the mastermind behind, Frog Nation, to do to figure out what happens to the funds, or would you rather have 200,000 time holders vote on like governance proposals to only vote for things that will pump their back in the short term, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, those are my thoughts on, I guess, just DAOs in general. And I think Daniele is receiving like not that much, like too much hate on I guess making decisions like on behalf of Frog Nation. I think that's fine, right? I would much rather have Daniele figure out what happens to Wonderland's huge treasury than just random governance proposals like Frog is saying this makes sense. In fact, Daniele should be making all the shots right now. But anyways, let's kind of move on. I don't want this to be too long a video, but knowing me, this might go to half an hour or something. But anyways, let's go over the Sushiswap scandal, right? So you can kind of already see that maybe Daniele, he's not happy with Trader Joe, right, and how they're not their incentives are not aligned, and Trader Joe is saying, hey, we're not going to help you out, you can't just force us into giving you more rewards and whatnot. So that's kind of the background there. And then on the 6th of December, this article came out on rect.news, right? I really love this channel or this website. It's an article that goes over rugs and the scandals and whatnot, right? I think it's pretty good. But it kind of goes over the fall of Sushiswap, right? From essentially, back in DeFi summer, the Chef Nomi forked Uni. They did a vampire attack. Sushi became huge, and then Chef Nomi, who was the original developer for Sushi, he kind of rug pulled, and then he after he got death threats, he returned the money, and then at that point 0x Monkey essentially took over the project and essentially turned Sushi from a rug into an actual blue chip, right? I think the Sushiswap token went to 10 cents or something, and then through 0x Maki, his leadership, his vision, Sushi was able to get to above $20, right? And now it's at $6 or something, but it was quite a turnaround. But recently 0x Maki stepped down from the project, and this kind of goes over why he did that, as well as I guess the shady behaviors of the Sushiswap team. Now I'm just going off of this article. I don't know. I'm sure there's an other side of the story, but just going over the article really quickly. So right now the team, or a week ago, the team was led by Joseph DeLong, Omakase, Kano, and Rachel, right? And the acronym is Joker, right? JOKR. So essentially, when Maki announced that he's going to be leaving Sushi, he tweeted out that he's going to be resigning, right? He's going to step down, right? And it kind of made it seem like, he's taking a break. He worked too hard. It kind of seemed like, that they left on good terms. But it turns out that, one of the team members on Sushi, the internal team members, they were fed up with the Joker, I guess, and released these internal screenshots of the Sushi dev team. And Maki essentially said that, hey, I was forced out. I didn't step down. And he only said he stepped down just so there wouldn't be too much drama. And speaking of more drama, apparently there were, these are invoices for team dinners at New York City, $9,000 dinners in New York, and $5,000 tickets to VC mixers, events for the Joker team, where no funds were raised, and the DAO never knew about it, right? And these are invoices. So, you can argue that, this doesn't look good, right? The Sushi team, they deserve to have fun and whatnot, and they deserve compensation for building all they're doing. But, it doesn't look good, right? Especially when rect.news announces this. And then, there are other scandals on, the Sushi team, receiving tokens unfairly, yada, 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 more internal drama. So I'm going to link all this, right? I'm not going to go through everything, but, it just seems like a really dysfunctional team, right? There's no leadership, and it seems like everyone hates each other, and token keeps going down. And the thing is, Sushi devs, they don't really own the Sushi token, right? So also recently there was a governance proposal to give the team more Sushi tokens, and when the price is perpetually going down, like this, it doesn't sit well with the community, right? But it's also not a good thing that the team doesn't have any tokens, because if they don't have any tokens, then what incentive do they have to, make Sushi go up. You know? But anyways, this happened, right? Just so much drama. And then recently, Joseph DeLong, right, the former CTO of Sushi, former because he recently stepped down, right? He said, you know, like, I'm sorry guys, I messed up. You know, these are my failures. Reflecting back, you know, maybe I need to get some therapy. So I hope Joseph, you know, I hope he recovers from this well. I really respect him, you know, and it was a good attempt, right? Sushi, great story. Back from 2020, they died, they went to zero, they had a resurgence, and now they're on their way to zero just because, you know, the leadership was incapable, right? I mean, let's just be honest, right? It's and we can give our commentary on that. So, you know, Sushi going down, and you can see that, you know, Sushi, they don't really have a direction. They were just like, you know what, let's just launch on all chains and hope it works out, right? But obviously, you know, if you know anything about business, you shouldn't you shouldn't be a generalist, right? You shouldn't just like spread yourselves too thin. You should like you should specialize in one thing and just be really good at it, right? And then build horizontally or vertically from that. But you know, they were just, I mean, no real vision, right? Like they have $46 of liquidity on a Hiko chain. Like what? Like why? Like why are you allocating resources there? So that is when Dani, right, knowing the background, where, you know, Dani knew the Sushi team is essentially going to zero, right? They're very, very dysfunctional, and Trader Joe is not going to be on their side. So what do you do, right? Do you go to Pangolin, right? Maybe not. How about Wonderland with a $750 million treasury? Like, what if they just take over Sushi, right, and build products on top of Sushi and integrate everything? And I think it's interesting just because Sushi, the founding story of Sushi, is very Frog Nation-like, right? Because, you know, there were no VCs involved. They started from zero, they forked something, and they, you know, turned a simple Uniswap fork into a plethora of projects and products that are like being used by, you know, a lot of people today, right? I mean, I use Sushi sometimes just because it offers the best liquidity, but, you know, I was never a fan of the Sushi token just because like the tokenomics were like pure garbo. But, you know, let's restructure Sushi into the DEX it was more to be, the DEX for frogs, built by frogs. So that was really interesting. And yeah, so now let's kind of go over the restructuring, right? And yeah, let's kind of go over the restructuring because I think there's a lot to unpack in this governance proposal. So I'm going to go through this and give my thoughts on them. When I went through this the first time, it was a great read, right? I was like, wow, like I was like actually inspired. I was like, wow, like, this is crazy. I feel like this is part of DeFi history. And it's not guaranteed. I mean, if this takeover happens, right? Because, you know, it's not guaranteed, right? They have to vote this in. If this happens, then like I feel like that's a step in the right direction for DAOs in general. And if, you know, Dani can pull this off, then, you know, like the cross-chain meme for Frog Nation and Abracadabra, Popsicle, Wonderland, like it's gonna start to make a lot more sense. So Frog Nation proposes Dani to become part of the Sushi project, and with defined mandates to bring additional directions to the project to help continue what Sushi has been doing, which is to be the decentralized exchange. And, you know, Sushi, even though, you know, their business development skills were lacking, they did like make like really good products, right? They were the first multi-chain DEX. They created Kashi, right? And the Abracadabra engine runs on Kashi, right? So even though like no one uses Kashi on Sushiswap, the tech works, right? As like demonstrated by Abracadabra. Bento box, Miso, show you, and I'll go over that later too. And he kind of goes over like, hey, like there's like no direction. Like, why are you on all these chains? In fact, maybe if Sushi only focused on like the top 5 chains, maybe they would have done better, right? So for example, maybe ETH layer 2, Avalanche, Phantom, or, you know, and like, you know, and Polygon or something, right? Like if they just really focus their efforts on those 5 chains, right, or those 5 ecosystems, maybe they would have done much better, right? Like why are you allocating so much capital? Why are you allocating so much capital into, you know, like these chains that no one really uses, right? But yeah, like you mentioned, a few of these chains don't add significant volume and should be reevaluated, right? So like, you know, let's cut the fat, right? Trim the fat. Let's focus on what actually matters. Kashi, right? Kashi has only good things to say about Kashi, right? Because Abracadabra is essentially a fork of Kashi with other, you know, products built on top of it. Abracadabra has shown that the tech works and it's fantastic. And the general idea is that, you know, Popsicle Finance is a liquidity director, right, liquidity manager, and Abracadabra allows for leverage on yield-bearing assets. So what if Popsicle and Abracadabra can be integrated with Sushi, right? I think it's an interesting proposition. So Miso is also, it's like a launchpad for token sales, like YGG and BitDAO raised on there. And it's actually, it's actually pretty successful. So he wants to keep it going. And then Shoyu is something that he wants to get rid of, right? It's trying to be a decentralized OpenSea. And you kind of get you kind of get this vibe that like Sushi was trying to do everything, right? And they were just doing everything like half-assedly. In fact, maybe they should have focused on Kashi, Miso, and the DEX, right? And just focus on those things, and like also not expand to too many ecosystems, and maybe they would have done better, right? I mean, obviously this is all, it's obvious in hindsight, but it kind of makes sense. And then tokenomics, the tokenomics are just not that good. It's a perpetual farm token. Sushi did create the xSUSHI model, right? So for XJO, right, for all these X assets, it was innovated from Sushi, right? The only problem with the Sushi tokenomics is that they're offering inflationary rewards on literally all chains, which is like not a good proposition. And this is why Sushi is never the #1 DEX on any chain. And whenever I bridge to new ecosystems and whenever I do research, I know that Sushi is always there, right? And I use it. But I know for a fact that at some point a new DEX will emerge in the new ecosystem and it'll flip Sushi and TVL. Just because Sushi can't offer like super high inflationary rewards to early like liquidity providers, right? Just because they're cross-chain and they don't want to dilute current token holders. But if you can create a new DEX on a new ecosystem with a new token, you can just offer much better yields than Sushi, right? So that's why Sushi will never be the #1 DEX on any chain. And sure, like investing in the #2 or #3 DEX on all ecosystems, maybe that has some value, but generally I like to bet on winners, right? I just bet on winners. So okay, so tokenomics, xSUSHI is cool, but the rest of the tokenomics are kind of bad. And then the contributors, the team, it's very dysfunctional. We need to restructure the team. The JOKR, that acronym, that's a meme now. Maybe those people, maybe they can continue to be contributors, but maybe they shouldn't have leadership roles, just for optics, right? Because it's at the end of the day, it's business, right? Like optics do matter. And like people get fired all the time just because it doesn't look good for the entire company and whatnot. So anyways, let's go over the proposal, right? And Frog Nation and Sushi, there's a lot of brand alignment there just because Sushi is cross-chain, Abracadabra is trying to be cross-chain, Sushi like no VCs, Abracadabra like Wonderland like no VCs. So I feel like the Sushi, the token holder base for Sushi and the token holder base for Dani coins are kind of similar, and I just really do see like a bunch of alignment in the product and whatnot. So anyways, it's gonna go over here. So what's gonna happen? So first and foremost, Frog Nation establishes a mandate for a new service collective for Sushi and becomes a part of a combined ecosystem for Abracadabra, Popsicle Finance, and Wonderland. Okay, which makes sense, right? Like let's integrate Abracadabra and Popsicle on top of Sushi, and Wonderland can just be, like a DAO or like a hedge fund or like, just a VC, like a pseudo, people frog-led VC that invests in ecosystem projects to create more like token holder value for, Sushi, Abracadabra, Spell, Ice, and time holders. In the interim, the service collective retains the right to restructure Sushi and define specifically the parameters for governance at an elevated tempo. So Dani is essentially saying, let me take over the project. I'm going to restructure everything, and I'm going to move much faster than Sushi has moved in the past. And we're going to share resources, and Sushi will always be its own project, right? And the goal is to be the DEX for everyone. So full focus on the DEX, change in tokenomics, change the team, deprecate legal entity. So let's see, what do I want to go over here? Right, so one thing that matters is to become the best DEX that exists, right? So, Sushi was always the #2 or #3 DEX. Let's be the #1, right? Maybe you can't flip Uniswap, maybe you can't flip Trader Joe, maybe. But on Phantom, maybe Sushi can become the #1 DEX. On Harmony, maybe Sushi can become the #1 DEX, right? So those are kind of, and then like ETH layer 2 and whatnot. And what happened to Trident, right? Trident was supposed to launch, but I guess it's not gonna happen anytime soon after Joseph stepped down. But Trident is a product that the team has been working on. Let's actually ship this and like ship it in a way that makes sense. And in terms of improving governance, so I guess more governance, continue to decentralize, and a proposal to deprecate xSUSHI. I just thought this was interesting, just because I feel like xSUSHI, I remember like back in 2020, I bought into sushi because I was like, wow, like I can buy sushi, stake it, and earn yield. That's insane. You know, I was a pleb back then, but you know, like that's kind of how I thought about it. But he answered that, hey, like right now, let's not focus on xSUSHI. Like in the short term, let's just focus on like rewriting the ship, right? And xSUSHI can always be introduced later, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with deprecating it in the next 2 months as the team transitions to Frog Nation. But, you know, let's just, you know, focus on what needs to be focused on and just, you know, improve tokenomics, improve team and whatnot. And then, you know, change parts of the team. So, you know, Dani is going to be the visionary and strategist. He's going to essentially, you know, be the CEO, I guess, or maybe not the CEO, but, you know, like the lead strategy officer or whatever, and whatnot, right? Okay, and overall grand vision, I'll kind of go over this, but, you know, this proposal is bold, right? I mean, it really is bold, right? And, you know, if there's anyone that can pull it off, I would bet on Dani. It doesn't mean that it's going to work, but I still think it's a really interesting development in the DeFi ecosystem. Yes, price is down recently, but like, you know, like I don't really care, right? I mean, I'm just like farming, I'm really comfy, I'm just like accumulating assets that I like. And like, who knows, right? Maybe we look back in 6 months in mid 2022 and say, wow, like this was a failed attempt, but, you know, like I'm really happy that, you know, we tried this, right? It was a great moment of history. Or maybe, you know, like 6 months from now, we look back on this and was like, wow, like this was the moment sushi went from, you know, a shitcoin into, you know, like a top 20 project or something. Like who knows, right? I'm not here to make predictions and whatnot, but I'm just documenting this moment. The synergies make sense. If, you know, sushi becomes a DEX for everyone, then Popsicle, the ICE token, will accrue more value because it can be the liquidity manager. Abracadabra can, you know, offer lending and leverage. And Abracadabra, right, their goal is to make MIM, the magic internet money, a more liquid stablecoin. And I would assume that if they did take over, right, USDC DAI Tether pairs would not exist anymore. It would only be like Bitcoin MIM, ETH MIM, you know, like MIM UST, right, like assets like that, and just, you know, like go with the ethos and the narrative and the brand of, you know, like fuck the suits, like we don't like the suits, you know, we don't like the suits. Yeah, but anyways, you know, when I read through this, I thought I was like very, very inspired. I know a bunch of people aren't happy about this for like particular reasons, but yeah, I think the sushi team is on board. So, you know, sushi, their Twitter said Frog Nation, Sushiswap, right? Sushiswap, right? And a few of the team members from Sushi said like, hey, like I'm down. Let's rewrite the ship. And like I mentioned, you know, like there's gonna be integrations with the current product, right? So I don't really know how this accrues value to time, right? It's kind of it's really hard to value projects like Ohm in time, just because like, do you just look at the treasury value and be like, okay, like, you know, it deserves a premium because Daniele, or do you, or like, you know, like, because like it's really unclear. But I can definitely see the synergies between the sushi token, the Popsicle token, or the ICE token, and the spell token, just because, you know, it's gonna, because how ICE and spell works is that as TVL grows, there's more value accrual to the token, right? Because it generates more fees, and ICE stakers and spell stakers earn part of those fees. So I can definitely see the value accrual to Popsicle and Abracadabra. For time, it's a little it's a little unclear, but, you know, like I really like the vision. I really like the steps Dani is taking, right? I mean, like Wonderland used the Ohm mechanism to build out the treasury, right? And I think this is this makes sense, right? From a business development perspective, from a DeFi user perspective, from a farmer's perspective, it just makes sense, right? Because at this rate, sushi is going to go to zero. And then, you know, Dani's saying, hey, imagine if sushi was a full order book based on exchange on top of ZK Sync or L2 Tech with margin trading and options, right? So he's kind of laying out the vision, right? So, you know, like sushi, you know, let's save this project. We like, everyone loves sushi, right? Because I feel like sushi is one of those projects that everyone likes. Like, no one hates sushi. It's just that, you know, it's just like not doing well. And I remember back in 2020 and earlier this year, everyone was telling me that sushi is going to flip Uniswap. But, you know, it obviously didn't happen. But, you know, I think sushi has a long ways to go in terms of flipping Uniswap. I don't really talk about Uniswap, and people don't really understand Uniswap just because they can't use it, right? Because it's on ETH mainnet. But, you know, that team is like ahead of like that team is like way ahead, miles ahead of the competition when it comes to creating decentralized exchanges, and they have a bunch of resources. So maybe it's too far-fetched to assume that Sushi can flip uni, but I definitely think that this is more bullish Sushi than it is bearish, if that makes sense. And what is this? Yeah, and there's also like this hatred amongst Dani. I kind of touched on this earlier, but like it's not really a DAO, right? Because right now, Dani sold the AVAX top, Dani bought the Bitcoin and Ether dip, and Dani is essentially using the treasury to create his own ecosystem to create token holder value. And like I mentioned earlier, like would you rather have Dani manage the treasury, or would you rather have like a bunch of farmers like TikTokers like manage what to do to the treasury? Because anyone that's upset at this is only upset because they don't understand how important this is, right? Wonderland literally purchased 1.2 million convex, right? That's insane, right? This is uber bullish abracadabra. This is uber bullish spell, and it's also a way for the Wonderland treasury to just also like I guess grow in value, just because they can stake it and earn yield and whatnot. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but essentially right now MIM has to incentivize liquidity on Curve by paying out spell tokens, right? I am currently farming spell by putting my stable coins onto Curve, right? The MIM 3 pool. But obviously, you don't want to pay out inflation rewards perpetually. It's not sustainable, right, for the token holders. So what you can do is, what if Wonderland just buys up a bunch of convex, right? Just gobble it up, and then instead of paying out spell rewards, Wonderland and his team can redirect Curve rewards onto the MIM 3 pool, so they are no longer going to be paying out spell emissions. And this is how Dani gets to 0 emissions for spell over time. And it's one of the reasons the spell token has done relatively decently well recently. So I really don't like how Dani receives hate for like not being a DAO. But if you're a time holder, you want this to happen, right? You don't want like a bunch of 20-year-old TikTokers voting on what happens to the treasury. You need a benevolent dictator to kind of lead you in the right way. And maybe in the future it can be a DAO, but and people just assume that Daniele is calling all the shots. But I mean, I talked to the team, and that team is super strong. It's not just Daniele. I mean, they have a bunch of other great developers like Sifu, like Squirrel, etc. I mean, when you're betting on Wonderland, you're betting on the entire team, you're betting on the entire ecosystem, because I mean he was very clear from the beginning, Occupy DeFi, Frog Nation, People Maxi, all of his projects are intended to work together. So you should assume that in the future, the Wonderland treasury is going to be used to create more value for spell holders, ice holders, etc. Right? He even announced that $50 million worth of stablecoins from the Wonderland treasury is going to be deployed onto Popsicle Finance. Right? I mean, he's made it pretty clear, I think. So I think people are upset at this is only upset just because tokens is down, right? If price is down, if price is going up or was stable, I think everyone would be like, oh yeah, go Dani. But just because people, I mean, their tokens are down, people just think that there's this upset, right? that Dani is doing this. But our bears fucked? I don't know, right? I mean, maybe Dani's about to have some sushi, a nice sushi dinner. Maybe they are fucked, right? This bear seems pretty fucked from this image. But for my opinions, I think in terms of sushi, it's unclear if this is going to create more value for the sushi token. But from a more fundamental perspective, I do think that it's more bullish than bearish. And I think this is more bullish spell and ice than it is sushi, right? And I'm not gonna assume that I know how to value time, right? Just because it's such a new asset class, the rebase tokens. Do you value it based on the treasury? Do you place a premium on this man right here? So I think the entire ecosystem that what Dani and his team is trying to build. It makes a lot of sense, right? The longer you're in DeFi, the more you understand business development. I think the more you're going to appreciate what he is doing, just because what he is doing is unprecedented. And if you're trying to be a winner in the space, right, you're not going to make everyone happy, right? I mean, sure, this doesn't look. I mean, depending on your stance, this might not look good for Daniele, right? But from a business perspective, it makes sense, right? If you want to be a winner, if you want to like, just take over everything, you have to be very, very demanding, right? This is like one of the things you learn in like negotiation in like business school. It's like, hey, like we've been partners. Can I ask more from you, right? Can you give me like XYZ? Like, can you lower the costs? And if they say no, then like, what do you do? Like, do you just cave in? No, you just move on and you try to make a better product, and maybe you do something like as grand as taking over sushi, right? And you know, it's impossible to make everyone happy, and you know, maybe people aren't happy because it's like not actually a DAO, but you know, it is what it is, and you know, I still think that what he is building is incredible. Yeah, and I just want to make this video, so let me check how long this video has been. Oh, nice, half an hour. Yeah, so I'm really good at, you know, making very, very long videos. But anyways, hopefully this is kind of entertaining. Lots of drama, lots of scandals, but hopefully some good can come out of it. It'll be interesting, like what happens to Joe after this, right? I still think that Joe has Lindy, and you know, even if Sushi like hypothetically offers like better slippage and whatnot, or like, you know, better swaps, you know, it's gonna be hard for them to, I guess, overcome like the muscle memory of people just going to TraderJoeXYZ.com to like, you know, make swaps. So maybe the Sushiswap team, or maybe Sushi can like lower transaction fees, right? Especially if they're deprecating xSUSHI, maybe, you know, they can lower transaction fees and whatnot to redirect more liquidity. Like, who knows, right? I mean, there's no way to know. And I'm sure, I mean, this isn't gonna like go, like, it's not gonna happen tomorrow, right? They have to vote on it, and then there has to be a bunch of restructuring. Maybe everything gets settled by the end of the year, and like next year it's the holidays. But yeah, just wanted to make this video. I want to look back on this video in like 6 months, 12 months, and see how everything panned out. So thank you guys for watching, and have fun farming out there, and let me know what you think of my takes. You know, I try to be as level-headed as I can, but you know, I'm sure people are, you know, can get upset or something. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Have a good one.